player tries to do what Promise does, which is tries to end the game immediately. No upgrades, no long-term planning. This expansion was late, no long-term planning. This expansion was late, no long-term planning. The only good long-term planning I can see here is the fact that these queens are up pretty timely. And meanwhile, Artosis has a lot of roaches. Look at this, 28 roaches. He's already ahead in the drone count. I mean, he even has this Overseer that's been very active, trying to just send more changelings up here, see what's going on up at the top. And of course, this other Overseer by Promise, trying to check out what Artosis is up to. But now we have ourselves an actual mid-game. I wouldn't call it normal, because, you know, you normally have your own main as opposed to one of the other mains. But either way, he's going to do some good response here. And this is an interesting choice by Artosis. He gets a Baneling nest up. I'm a little curious why he wasn't getting a Spire, or just any other tech building other than the Baneling. And I think this is due to the fact that increasingly players are starting to just put in more variety. I think that the current state of the balance is pretty good. You don't have to do anything so extreme as, well, if he has all roaches and I get air units, then he loses, you know. There's a lot more mixes of Hydras and Zerglings, and look, already ton of Zerglings from Promise, able to spread out, and Artosis just barely gets the spine crawlers up in time. And see, look at this. This creep is going to let these roaches just join up with that base so easily. They do manage to dart in here. Queen, obvious target, running in, taking out many drones. Artosis doing a little bit of spitting action, but one of the big, great uses of this Baneling nest is if you just have one Baneling at the ramp and one Baneling behind the spine crawlers, there's basically nothing that's going to get up there. With the exception of perhaps a big army of roaches, but of course you would be aware of where a big army of roaches was. So Artosis not way ahead, but still a little bit ahead in terms of the food count. Promise, on the other hand, does have these two bases up. Where did all of his drones go? Where the hell are Promise's drones? I know Artosis did a lot of counterattacking in this game, but looks like it was far more effective than even I, who's seen this replay twice, was aware of. And this is another very excellent response by Artosis, clearing out his main. Now, most of you are probably going to say, well, duh, yeah, like, look, oh, it's horrible that he's clearing out his main. No, of course it's good. I mean, it's kind of obvious. But this is characteristic of just a big general trend that you'll see a lot of good players do, which is after they've recovered, like Artosis is starting to hit the period of recovery. He's starting to look a little bit more like a normal Zerg. He has two bases up. We see an infestation pit is out as well. Once players start to hit this period where they're feeling a little bit more normal, they freak out and they go crazy. Like, it is the weirdest thing. It's like counterintuitive. I mean, if you tell someone not to freak out and try to win, you know, when they're finally starting to get stable, you know, not to try to freak out and go all in, they'll go, yeah, totally, of course, most obvious thing in the world. But there's this urge, it's so hard to describe, where you're in a game, you've been losing, and in your head, you're just thinking, oh, you're doing these big emo sighs. God, I'm just going to go take a cold shower and cry, you know, you just want to beat up on yourself, and all of a sudden, a glimmer of hope. You might actually be in this game. He doesn't have 6 expansions. He only has 2, and you also have 2. Oh my god, I might actually be even. And it's an instant. It literally, your brain goes, oh, I might actually be in this game. And you'll feel this surge of just like, ah! You'll get like tons of adrenaline, and your eyes will light up, and your head will feel like it's expanding, and you will want to go kill him now. But resist all those little things bubbling up inside of you, because they're wrong, and because your body's an idiot. Use your brain, not all the little chemicals that are floating through your system. So in this game, Artosis, I love the fact that once he really started to get stable, you know, he had all this stuff up on his high ground, he's getting attacked over here, he's not even sure if this expansion is going to be able to stay alive, and finally, oh my god, it's clear he will, and what does Artosis do? He just clears his main out. Gets a good mix of Banelings and Roaches. Banelings are going to be very good against any Zerglings trying to surround the Roaches, and are also going to be very useful for sweeping around and eliminating Hydralisks. He just has a nice, solid little army, and he's just macroing up. Also, here's another twist that Artosis, I've seen him do increasingly more. Artosis used to be a player who was all roaches all the time. He would even get some hydras in there, but, you know, roaches, and that's about it. Let's just ignore this for a moment. Let's just look at this extraordinarily exciting moment in this match, and let's just ignore it. So, I mean, Artosis used to be this all roaches all the time player. He had probably 80% of his army was roaches, and whenever he got into a big battle, he was excited because that meant he could rally more roaches. That was characteristic of his play, really characteristic of all Zerg's plays. But things have changed a little bit. In terms of crisis management, this is a style that we've seen Artosis do against more than one race, right? He gets an infestation pit up when he has a relatively low econ. So right here, you know, he doesn't even have a third base. Doesn't even have these extra geysers. And in fact, Artosis doesn't even have this fourth geyser at his expansion. But what he's going to do is he's going to get a layer, or excuse me, he's going to hive up real fast on his infestation pit. And then he's going to get broodlords very, very, very quickly. This is a very, very cool little style that we've seen pop out. And look at Artosis barely able to get there in time. Surrounds it. And the Nutty Swarm just cannot unload enough in time. Queen falls, but either way, Artosis coming out a little bit ahead. Meanwhile, our good friend Promise, he's getting infestation pit, but we see him getting the pathogen glands, so they spawn with enough energy to do a fungal growth. They're the infestors popping out. Infestors are one of the most essential units in roach versus roach battles. Absolutely critical. But this is just a very, very cool little thing that Artosis does whenever both players are kind of whenever he's just a little bit pressed, he goes for these broodlords very quickly. Because notice this army by Artosis is pretty much all minerals. Yeah, the roaches cost 25 gas, but it's not like you're making a bunch of Mutalisks. It's not like that's going to crash down. Ordinarily, what would cause the gas to crash down is something like getting upgrades. And we see Artosis get double +1/+1 upgrades a lot. In fact, in almost all his games, we see him get +1/+1, but as I'm scrolling around here, I don't see that anywhere. In fact, the only gas he's really spent is to get the speed upgrade for roaches, to get Banelings, not even with the speed upgrade, and to get the Zergling speed upgrade. Just tons and tons of mineral focus, so sure, he's going to have this stockpile, and he's going to be able to get a greater spider up very quickly. And it's a cool transition because everyone's a little bit low econ, not really going to be that many Hydralisks up there. And with this giant roach mass, it's a very stable follow-through. So yeah, and look at Artosis just joining everything up with creep. Look at how gooped up this whole map is. Easy defense from side to side. Artosis finally getting his main up. Finally taking more expansions. Promise looks like he's massing up a little bit. Has burrowed his infestors so he can potentially do a little bit of cute stuff. But it looks like they're just having a peekaboo time. They're not really going to be doing any aggression. But I absolutely love this smooth move going up to the Greater Spire so quickly. And if we can even go to the production tab, are there any Corruptors coming out? Yeah, look at that. 5 Corruptors en route for Artosis. So there's this funky thing that happens with army compositions, where if you go for a really big army, like a huge army, you kind of have to do something with it. Right? If you make a big army and you just try to defend, you're going to lose to a player who expands. And as we can see, Promise moving forward with the big force. And you know, I'll actually talk about this transitions to broodlords with all these roaches after the game. But for now, suffice to say that it's pretty good. Notice the timing on it. Right about the time that Promise is getting ready to expand, or excuse me, getting ready to attack, Artosis is readily popping out as broodlords. Now recall that these broodlords were in the works when Artosis was on 2 bases. He got this infestation pit, and he had this hive when he had this main over here at the left, and his natural expansion. And after he started to tech to hive, suddenly, whoa, taking this base, and then taking this base, and then taking this base. If we look at the current game state, it might look like Artosis would just went 5 base roach broodlord. That's how you might describe it if you just looked at this state. But what's really happening is that Artosis got a huge army first, and then rushed up to the broodlords, and now is backing up and starting to make more drones. With everything. Now he's actually starting to get more bases, get more economy focus up. So I absolutely love this little transition that we're seeing here. Now notice that none of this has actually any anti-air at all. And so here is a creep tumor by Promise that actually just a moment ago saw all these broodlords. So in the production tab, we do see Promise making many, many Mutalisks right now. And I actually think that this was one of the bigger blunders of this game. Oh, look, everyone's maxed. Time for a final confrontation. And it's kind of funny. This might just look like Artosis saved up for a maxed army and was just like, alright, I guess I'm attacking now. But really, Artosis just desperately needed to get these roaches up and defend, and then rush to get these broodlords up after he finally stabilized. And it's only about now that Artosis has finally started to get a little bit more time to breathe. And these evolution chambers are so revealing in that regard. I mean, honestly, who waits until like the 25-minute mark, you know, to actually start getting evolution chambers or whatever the time is right now? So, I mean, this is a great example of just good crisis management and good response and just, you know,